This programme was produced at and first aired on MPR, Manawatū People's Radio, with support from New Zealand On Air. Ka pai irarangi te motu, MPR. If you're enjoying this podcast in Manawatū, you could make your very own, just like this one. MPR exists to help people like you tell your story or share your passion on air and online. Check out mpr.nz for more information.
It's time for our Monday serial, A Respectable Veneer, written by Rachel Doré, published by Upstart Press and narrated by Romy Hooper. This serial has been made possible by funding from the Earle Creativity and Development Trust, with collaboration from Manawatū People's Radio. A Respectable Veneer is a story about love and courage, but we remind you of our regular content warning. There are elements of violence and references to child abuse. An extra content warning. This episode contains references to child trafficking and sexual abuse. Last week, Ruby was sickened when Edie shared a dark secret of her own.
"Shall I turn the light on?" Ruby said, as she handed Frank his cup of tea. "No, there's a lamp behind me, that'll do." Frank retreated into the shadow of the chair. "Good night, then," she said. "Will you be all right? Can I get you anything else?" "I hope one of us gets some sleep." "I can't sleep. I'm going to sit up and do a bit of hand stitching for a while." "How's the new coat coming on?" "I've nearly finished taking it to pieces." "Use the machine if you like, when you're ready. It won't bother me. As a kid, I got used to going to sleep to the sound of Mother's singer. Some nights I think I can hear it still. Perhaps I wish I could." "Thanks. I'll let you know when I do." She took a step toward the door. His voice lifted. "If you don't think you can sleep, I could do with some company. Turn on the light if it's better for you. Did you make enough tea?" Light shone on smudged tracks and dust on the dining table, showing where Frank had steadied himself. Rain whispered on the windows. Ruby helped herself to a cup of milkless tea. "Have you seen anything of Vi?" she had to ask. "You didn't frighten her off entirely," he said. "She found an excuse to knock on the door the other morning. Reckon she found some mail in her letterbox addressed to me." "Snooping, was she?" "Who knows? Douglas uses this address for his mail, and now you. I shouldn't think there'd be much of interest to her." "She probably just wants to see you're all right." "I think," he said, "since neither of us can sleep and we're here drinking tea, this may be a good time for you to tell me your story." Ruby abandoned the idea of sewing and took the chair opposite Frank. "First," she said, "I'm curious about your dislike of Vi. Clearly she's been a nuisance, coming in like she did, but perhaps she meant well." Frank leaned forward with a grunt of pain. He grabbed the leg of his pyjamas to lift his leg off the chair and settled back on the seat. "Can I do anything?" "No." He waved his hand. "Now, fair's fair. Story for story." "Vi told me she and your mother were great friends," said Ruby. "And you and her son—" "Phew! Mother couldn't stand the woman, though she'd never have said as much. Mother had some idea it was a Christian duty to put up with people like that. Vi is a self-righteous, two-faced biddy. Vicious to boot. Snooping and sin-picking are a hobby of hers. You should see the way those beady eyes positively glitter if she thinks she can put someone to rights." "Awkward for you and Douglas." "At the very least. You couldn't imagine Douglas in prison, could you? I'd probably manage better. I'm tougher than he is. Don't even think about it. Talking about Vi sets my teeth on edge. Why are we? I shouldn't have asked, I suppose. I thought if I knew a bit more it would help. News of what happened to that train had scarcely disappeared from the headlines before Vi was around here wanting to go through Mother's things. Even now, the idea of her picking through what Mother had is sickening. How did she think I could bear to have dreadful people pawing through Mother's stuff? Jumble sales. There's something disgustingly morbid about it all. I feel badly about sorting through her things myself now. Nonsense, I want you to. You're doing me a favour. She'll be up there smiling, knowing you and Tink will make good use of it all. I know she will. You two would have had great fun together. Ruby wanted to imagine it. By the way, said Frank, I haven't thanked you for putting Vi in her place. And as for her poor darling Nigel, he was no friend to anybody who knew him. Nige was a real ratbag. And a bully. Turned out to be a thorough coward. She said he was killed. I wish I'd shot him myself. Krauts did us a favour. She couldn't tell whether his gasp was a sob of pain or a burst of bitter laughter. It could have been both. That's enough from me, he said. Let's go to the kitchen and make another hot drink. Shall we have toast? And you can tell me, who is Ruby Barton? And how did she end up at that dump Douglas stays in? Drizzle glittered against the glass when he turned on the kitchen light, and Ruby saw his face marred with pain as he lowered himself onto a chair. All I know about you is what Douglas told me, he said. I trust him and his instincts. He took a towel from here because he'd loaned you his, so I gathered you and Tink must have dropped out of the sky with nothing. She cut a thin slice of bread for him and put it under the grill, and took a new jar of plum jam out of the larder. Sooner or later, she'd have to answer for herself. May as well be now. Get it out, even though, for all Frank's caustic bluster, it was hard to imagine he was worldly enough to come to terms with any of it. The piece of bread curled brown at the corners, and she turned it over. When she and Edie stepped out of the railway station, she'd stepped into a different country. Palmerston North seemed an innocent, shallow place, pegged out flat between blue hills under a stretch of changeable sky. Not much could stay hidden in a place like this. She doubted anyone here could imagine what went on in the dank burrows that clustered in the gullies of Auckland's oldest slums. I hope that's not too brown, she said, handing him the toast on a plate. Knife, and pass the butter dish. A cup of cocoa was called for. She gave herself a cup without wanting it. The fridge purred unevenly in the background. Edie's bruises were on her mind. A thing like that would never happen to the child of a good mother, a decent mother. His eyes were on her while he bit into the jam-laden toast. Well, he said when he'd finished. I'm not a war widow. Her throat tightened. I've never been married. Well, that much I guessed. My name is not Ruby Barton. He spluttered his tea. My name was Una Marie Lambert. Una. Edie's name was Edna. Edna Lambert. I've become so used to being plain Ruby Barton. She lifted her head. I am Ruby Barton. Edie likes her name. Edie. She sometimes makes up other names for herself. Very well, Ruby Barton, he said. I'd better hear this. The first part of her story was dispensed in short sentences, almost a list. Jesus. Frank sucked air between his teeth. So your mother thrashed you with the back of a hairbrush, and they didn't notice your arm had been broken when that animal attacked you? You poor kid. And it was 3 days before they noticed and called a medic. They blamed me for it, so they probably saw it as just desserts. I wasn't allowed out of the house. I suppose they were at a loss as to what to do. The worst was that school, ballet, friends, it was all over. My arm was still in plaster when I started getting sick. The doctor told them what my condition was, and that was it. They wanted me out. Out? I was going to ruin their reputation, wasn't I? I don't know what they told everyone. They were ready to send me down country when my married sister took me in. Hilda and Barry lived right across town, so I suppose my parents thought it was for the best. They didn't come looking for me, and I didn't go back. I was there with Edie for 4 years. Crikey. He wasn't looking at her. Good of her, though, your sister. A skin was forming on top of her cocoa, crisscrossing lines drawing together like creases on an old woman's face. I get the impression living with your sister didn't end well, Frank said finally. No. Ruby emptied her cup in the sink and turned the tap on, watching the clear water follow the murk of chocolate milk down the plug hole. She gritted her teeth and wiped the sink with a rag, wrung it out and folded it, then flapped it out and refolded it. She didn't want to fill in the chapter about Hilda, who had broken her heart, accusing her of leading Barry on, throwing Ruby out and begging her to leave Edie behind, which turned into a tirade. You'll pay a sorry price for this. Mark my words, you wicked bism. Slut! Ruby had called her bluff and taken Edie on a cold night, struggling to carry a sleepy, confused 4-year-old and a suitcase up Sandringham Road with nowhere to go. They'd been picked up by a taxi driver who said he knew a lady in Freeman's Bay who took in young ladies in difficulties. He'd forego the fare, he'd said. It was all too much to explain. She threw the folded rag into the sink. She wanted to say goodnight, leave Frank to his own sleeplessness, when he sniffed noisily. I can't help wondering how you got by after that, he said. It couldn't have been easy. Why do you want to know any of it? Why should I tell you? You don't have to at all, he said quietly. You have rather left me in shallow water, though, changing your name like that. Go on. Do you think this is just a yarn? Have you drawn me out like this for a lark? Take your mind off yourself for a while. He narrowed his eyes. Well, that's a bit of effrontery, I must say. Do you goad people for amusement? You're a lousy bastard, Frank Pierce. I wonder what Douglas sees in you. Frank slammed his cane down on the tabletop. Christ, do you think you've got the monopoly on shame? How many years are you going to have it blistering your insides? You don't know what you're talking about, Frank. You think I'm ashamed because of that? Calm down. I won't be calm, she said. And it's far too late for you to be sorry. Everything about him looking at her inflamed her own self-loathing, igniting a surge of hatred for him too. It roiled through her blood. Her arms and hands itched to pick up the cup and throw it at him. Flexing her fists, she surveyed the kitchen for missiles at hand. Break the teapot on his skull? Grab his cane and whack him? Take it all out on him? But what would be the point? Nothing would change the past, the facts. You want to get into deep water. Righto, here's the short end of the story if you want it. Her voice quavered. I got by, as you put it, for the past 4 years by selling what I had. My body. That's right, I got by working as a whore. It was either that or Edie in an orphanage and me. Frank gaped at her. And me? She said. I had to live. I had to provide for Edie. I did what I could. I was lucky. She spat the word. Go on, she goaded. Throw me out. I've got bugger all to pack. I can go right now. Nobody's throwing anybody out, he said quietly. Sit down, Ruby. There's no need to fly off the handle like a vulgar harridan. I think you were brought up rather better than that. Don't say that. She crumpled onto the chair, her head in her hands. That's another bastardy thing to say. He leaned across the table with the lolly jar. Jelly bean. He arranged jelly beans on the tablecloth, while she assembled words. Out it came, how she'd found out what board and lodgings cost her at Mo Hanrahan's establishment, how her life had revolved around relying on and fearing Mo and her enforcers, like Breaker Watkins, Edie's many aunties, and how all along Mo had been preparing Edie for the market, and how Angel had tipped Ruby off. When Ruby looked up, he was wiping tears off his face with trembling hands. Gah! They were going to auction off a child. Tink! I'm going to be sick. With effort, he pulled himself upright and hobbled up the passage. She heard him retching in the bathroom. He returned, ashen-faced, and sat back at the table. Cup of tea, he said. Nothing and everything seemed to hang between them, and an unexpected wave of tenderness toward him washed over her. What about the police? He said. Couldn't you have... Phew! The local policemen used to pop into Mo's halfway through their beat, for a sherry while they collected their dues. They knew. Half the constabulary were either customers or collecting payment to overlook anything that went on. They even returned girls to Mo if they tried to get away. Not just girls either. You couldn't trust any of them. I take it Douglas doesn't know any of this. His voice was heavy. I haven't told him, she said. I couldn't. Will you? He put the last 5 black sweets back in the jar, tightened the lid. Not my story to tell, Ruby. Does it matter? He may never need to know. I hope not, she muttered. He's very fond of you. I'm sure I don't know why. If I thought there was the slimmest shred of substance in it, I might be jealous. It wouldn't make a difference to him, you know. Please, Frank, don't tell him. I couldn't stand to see him get a contemptuous, pitying look on his face when he looks at me. He won't hear it from me. But, my dear Ruby, don't be mistaken about Douglas. He might come off like a bit of a duffer. Underneath it all, he has the heart of a lion. He loves you, she said. I don't know anything about being in love, but I've never seen anything as true as his feelings for you. Tell me, Ruby, did you suggest this marriage business out of kindness, to cover him being queer, a fairy, or because you're sweet on him and hope you can lure him onto the straight and narrow path to legitimate matrimonial righteousness? She leapt to her feet, letting the chair crash to the floor behind her. The coat fell from her shoulders and she shook with cold wrath, naked underneath the old parachute silk slip she slept in. There you go again, being a rotten louse. You don't deserve him. Douglas is probably the only truly kind man I've met." "More gratitude than a crush, then?" He was laughing at her. "Oh, for God's sake, cover yourself up. Why haven't you got a proper dressing gown?" Self-pity began to seep through her. After confiding in him, he was stubbing her out. The kettle shrieked. "Let it. Wake the dead." "Put your coat back on before you catch your death," he was saying. She picked the coat up from the floor and turned away from him as she pushed her arms into the sleeves. She took the kettle off the hob and righted the chair, running her hands over the painted wood, hoping the back of it hadn't cracked. "Is being cruel what you do for fun?" she said, sagging onto the chair. "You're a brute. I admit to being fond of Douglas. Fond. Nothing more. I know how it is." "What he is." Frank wagged his head. "What we are." The Frigidaire grumbled. Out in the dark morning, a rooster crowed. "Do you have any idea how terribly tortured he is over you?" "Do you think I don't feel the same?" When Frank raised his head, his face was soft, his eyes watering. "You're so busy being a bastard it's hard to tell," she said. "And I think you treat him damnably." "Well, this cruel bastard who sits before you loves Douglas Woods with all of his lousy, rotten heart." "I bloody well hope so." The clock in the passage struck 5. On the veranda, the milk bottles rattled and the milkman whistled a bar of a tune. In the spare room, while Edie slept, Ruby pulled out Mrs. Pearce's materials. There was satisfaction and comfort in spreading them out and refolding them. If only the turmoil inside her could be dealt with in the same way. Her confession to Frank had brought things to the surface that should have stayed locked away. She almost hated him for goading her into it. Over the weekend, and each night of the week that followed, she busied herself making Edie new skirts, and unpicked the seams of the coat, and the cherry-coloured jacket, and measured the pieces.
You've been listening to A Respectable Veneer, a serialised novel by Rachel Doré, read by Romy Hooper. Listen to the next episode at 8 p.m. next Monday, or for the rest of the series, go to npr.nz/show/respectableveneer, or search for A Respectable Veneer wherever you find your podcasts.
If you enjoy this NPR podcast, please consider subscribing. Our podcasts are available on all major podcasting platforms: Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify, as well as the accessmedia.nz app. Support this show and others like it by giving a donation. For more information, go to www.npr.nz/donate.